Hey guys, it's your girl Delia, aka PhilaDehlia, checking in on you during times of quarantine. I hope you all are doing well and are safe and are healthy. I know I've been a little MIA, but I did tell you earlier this year I will be making more videos, and I thought, what better time than during a worldwide pandemic? So, what I'm going to do today is make a video I've been wanting to make for a really long time, and it's about my boy Nick Foles. You guys know I've always been a huge fan. I've always supported him as our backup starter, as anything when he got traded to the Rams way back when. I was sad to see him go. If you look through my video archive, I was, yes, very upset. But what I want to highlight here is something even beyond just the football and his stats and things of that nature. I want to go a little deeper and show you the other side of him as a biohacker, as a spiritual man going to seminary school. So, a video that I didn't get to make 2 years ago, right after he had won the Super Bowl, he had showed up in a podcast that I regularly watch or listen to, which is a biohacking podcast, which is very obscure, that I was shocked to see him show up right after winning a Super Bowl being interviewed by this host that I had been following in the health biohacking space for a really long time. So I'm going to kind of touch on that, but before I get into it, I know he just did get, he's now with the Bears. So congrats, Bears fans. You have a wonderful person, athlete, amongst your locker room and those players. Like, I know he's had his injury struggles, but what I do want to highlight is in his book. I actually haven't had the chance to read his book yet, but I really would like to. For those of you that have read the book, I would love your take on it. Some of the takeaways you got, leave them in the comments. But I'm going to highlight just a quick note that I was reading on a journalist describing his experience, his quick takeaways from Nick Foles' book, Believe It. So, right after he had gotten kind of cut from the Rams, he was kind of at a breaking point where he was ready to hang up his cleats. So Nick Foles texted Andy Reid. I think he was in the middle of like a McDonald's parking lot or something, and texted Andy Reid saying, this is it. I'm hanging up my cleats. This is done. And he texted his wife the same thing. And then when he got home, his wife had written him this like 4-page letter kind of telling him to reconsider and to pray about it. So what they ended up doing was praying that night. And what happened after that prayer was he knew he wasn't done. And so I want to see if I can pull up the quote. From a human perspective, I don't want to play football anymore, he prayed. But I also know this is about more than what I want. I need to trust you with all that I have. So he trusted God, and then the rest is history. So that's just, I am just blown away by Nick Foles. Every time I learn more and more about him, he's one of the realest, most genuine, loving souls in the NFL that I've researched. So let me get into this podcast before I start rambling. So, not podcast. Yes, this podcast. So, I have some notes. I re-listened to it, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to link it in the comments below. And the reason why I'm doing this is a very different side that doesn't get covered by the mainstream sports media. So like ESPN, NFL Network, like all those guys, they're not really digging into the spiritual stuff, the biohacking stuff. And to me, that is the most fascinating stuff, because when you think about it, in sports media, it's all the same stuff, like reviewing the stats and like picking on a few quirky things here and there. But it's really, I want to go deeper with you guys now that I've come back into PhilaDehlia after my hiatus. So get ready. Like, it's going to be a little different, but I hope you appreciate the level of just love that I'm putting into this. And I hope it inspires you. And I hope we can reconnect on an even deeper level than before. So we can still have fun, cheer our teams on, but I want to bring a little more to the table this year, if that's okay with you. Let's get into it. So, Nick Foles. He's on this podcast called Bulletproof, hosted by Dave Asprey. Now, the reason I found Dave Asprey was he's he does a ton of research in a bunch of ways to biohack your system, and he researches diet, medical journals on just ways to heal yourself naturally or in more extreme ways as well. But he's also an expert in mold toxicity. So my husband received a surprise diagnosis right after I was pregnant. So that's why I kind of skipped out on y'all for a while, because I was going down this research zone, learning amazing things. And I found him because he's a mold expert, and I learned about mold toxicity, how it can trigger certain diseases and things of that nature. And that's kind of what happened with my husband. So I found this guy, and Nick Foles found him the same way. So Nick Foles' wife ended up getting diagnosed with an autoimmune disorder, which is called POTS. And POTS, I believe, it there's moments where the body can't regulate the blood pressure within itself. So there's moments of fainting and just kind of like dizziness, and it's really, if untreated, unmanaged, it can cause a lot of problems. And hers was potentially triggered by mold as well, which is probably how Nick Foles found Dave Asprey. So coincidentally, things that are done to heal the body from these types of autoimmune disorders and things of that nature also help people be healthier, stronger, better performing athletes. So what's interesting is this diagnosis led Nick Foles into this other niche of preparing his body for game day that most players weren't even aware of. So in this, before I get into the full podcast recap, I just want to clarify that Dave Asprey, there's some mixed reviews on him, and I love him for his research. I will say I don't subscribe to everything that he advocates, and some of his diet things, I think when it comes to diet, nobody knows everything, and there's some stuff that overlaps with my belief, but some stuff that I'm not 100% sold on based on the lab work and results that we're seeing with Graham. So my husband. So anyways, let's get into it. I have my notes here. So I just want to make sure I cover all the interesting things so that when you watch it yourself, which I highly encourage you to, you'll see what stood out to me, and hopefully it'll stand out to you guys too. So Nick Foles mentions that at the Bulletproof Conference is where he kind of got introduced to all this stuff. And I was at the same Bulletproof Conference that he was at. Like, I was like, oh man, I could have ran into him. But what's interesting, when I was at this Bulletproof Conference, I'm going to put some videos so you can kind of see all the quirky things, health hacks that I was getting into. But at this conference, I was talking to all the vendors, and like everything is super legit, like high level, like this is what astronauts use to prepare to go to space type stuff. It's very fascinating, but it's accessible to the public, which is kind of like, yeah, I don't want to go too far into it. But as I was talking to some of the vendors, like they would reference like a lot of the top tier quarterbacks. So they had Tom Brady and Aaron Rodgers would use some of these devices, and then they would buy them for their wide receivers to help make sure that like they were on top of their game. So it was really cool to see like the secret side of NFL players and how they prep for game day. So this is the Bulletproof Conference where Nick Foles was at, got a full dose of what, Dave Asprey is all about. The other thing that he mentions is he put Christ and prayer at the center of everything in his daily life. So one of the key things he talks about is his why. So what I found fascinating was most athletes, they identify themselves and gain their joy from winning, right? That's their main focus. And what happens as a negative effect to that, when you put your core focus and your why and the reason you're doing stuff is just to win and get that feeling just out of ego, a lot of players end up having a downward spiral if they're not winning, or once they're out of the game, whether they get injured or retire, whatever it is, they end up having this downward mental spiral because they lose their identity because their whole life was tied to winning, And if they're not given that opportunity or failed at that opportunity, like they feel useless. And so it's a mental struggle that can lead to depression and a lot of other issues. So what Nick Foles said was like, he doesn't play for a win. Like he doesn't need that validation. He does it for, he plays for the love, like the love of the game, the love of his teammates. And love is way more stronger than winning. And that's, to me, love is the core feeling and energy that drives everything. So when you are fueled by love instead of ego and just winning, there's a whole different shift in your heart that you're fueled stronger. And so his priorities, number one was faith, followed by family, followed by football. And in contrast, most of his teammates, or in the NFL, it's in reverse order. It's football, family, then faith. And so he kind of had this different perspective that allowed him to cheat the system. Like he prayed, he broke down his daily routine during the season. So during the season, he would start his day with bulletproof coffee, and he would read scripture, and he would journal. So those three things every single day. And there's a lot of power behind, especially reading and journaling first thing in the morning. It allowed him to release kind of thoughts, creative energies, and allowed him to kind of reaffirm himself and his daily intention or whatever. So he would make coffee for himself, but also for the other players. So he was kind of this selfless guy, like the quarterback of the team, Super Bowl MVP, is just like making coffee for everybody and not expecting to be served. So there's just a real genuine humbleness about him that I appreciate. And I know Philadelphia Eagles fans, you appreciate that about him too. And then he, again, with his daily routine, he would do his supplementation and hydration, and then learn something new. So he made it a point to learn something new every day. And that's something that I would do as well, because I was educating myself on healing my husband. And so that's what he did as well. He was educating himself to heal his wife, but also in healing his wife, he figured out how to heal his body and keep his body refined and performing at optimum speed. And then he would do contrast tubs like cryogenic therapy and nano VXO. I'm not sure what that one is, but basically he would work hard to be a better person, which ended up making him a better player. So that's just some of his daily routines. Then he talked about his travel routine a little bit, things he would add on top of his daily routine to help hack the fatigue and disruption of travel. So he would wear blue blocking glasses, which, hey guys, see these glasses, how they're a little tinted? These are actually blue blocking glasses, which block the blue light that screens and the LED lights give off, which disrupt your circadian rhythm. That's a whole other story in itself. I don't want to go too into that. But lastly, he would wear, on the plane, he would wear compression boots, and pants. I'm not sure all the details, but I've seen them at the conferences. And then he would also focus on his hydration, taking fat water. And so those are the three things he would do to boost his travel experience so he wouldn't be as fatigued. And when you think about it, not all players are doing that, So he really honed in to ways to just keep his body functioning at optimum levels. And yes, I know you guys are going to be like, well, he wasn't perfect. He's not the best quarterback. He's no Tom Brady, whatever. But I think his faith paired with his wisdom of health and biohacking really gave him favor in that season that he won the Super Bowl. No other backup quarterback could have ever done what he did without taking the steps that Nick Foles did. So thankfully for us, Nick Foles was taking those steps when he was primed to be put in as a backup after that epic changing game when Carson Wentz went down. When I was there in the stadium, you know, watching Carson Wentz get, carted off the field or whatever. Like I was there. Nick Foles stepped in, and thankfully he was practicing all those pieces so that he was ready when he was called on. So let's see. Last things is the host asks every single guest what are the top 3 things if you could tell somebody to be happier or just live a healthier, stronger life. Every guest answers this. And so Nick Foles knew he was going to ask these questions. So this is what Nick Foles had told the host. And he took a lot of time to think about this. And he said, number 1, don't live to please others. Live to help, serve, and love others. It's all about the perspective in your heart and being genuine. So, wow. Like that. If the world did that, could you just imagine where we'd be? And then number 2 was live in the moment. So be where your feet are, because too many people get caught up in the past or get worried about the future, where they lose ground and it causes anxiety and stress. So if you can just live in the now, live in the present, focus on where, this moment, you can release the past, the stress, and you can release the future that may be causing anxiety, and if you can release that and stop holding on to these things that don't matter right now, that you'll be in a much better mental state, which puts you in a much better physical state. And then lastly, the third thing was yearning to learn. So his thing, which he already mentioned in his daily routine, was to learn something new every day. So that's something that I strive to do, and I'm so glad to hear Nick Foles saying this, because it's just something that everybody should do. The more wisdom you acquire, like the more power you have, the better you feel, the more in control you feel. To be honest, you guys, like during this pandemic, I've been at such peace for myself and my family, because 1, I've become more spiritual, and I do believe in God and prayer and protection, but God has also given me a lot of obscure information in health, just like Nick Foles, that allows me to biohack things in a sense where I know my body, my family's bodies their immune system is very strong. And I feel, as long as we are doing things safely and are aware of the situation, that we are in a good position to be protected in both ways, spiritually, but also physically, because of the way we eat, the way we supplement, the way we do all these things. So yeah, like what Nick Foles is going to do, what he does is learning every day. He focuses on nutrition. He's also going to seminary school. He reads a bunch of books, literature, and podcasts. So this is just a different side of Nick Foles that I wanted to bring to you, because I know, like, I've tried to look, and I haven't seen any like NFL analysts really be aware of this. So I want to bring it to light to you guys, and I hope it inspires some. And that's really it. So I wanted to step in, and I want to let you know, like, expect more from me, especially during quarantine. I'm going to try and be here for you guys. If anyone needs someone to talk to, is feeling scared, or just needs a little, interaction, like, I want to try and be there for you guys now, because I'm ready. Like, I got kind of distracted with my kids, but as Nick Foles said, like, I'm here to serve and to love people on a grander scale. That's my mission now, and I'm going to do it. I know we have our football connection, but we can definitely be football, but we can also, if somebody needs someone to talk to on a deeper level, I'm your girl. So that's it. Hope you enjoyed my little recap of Nick Foles, the softer side, or the spiritual side, whatever you want to call it. And if you have any questions, leave them in the comments below, and I will be coming to you guys next week with another special video. So get ready. It's your girl Delia, PhilaDehliaEagles.com, signing off. EAGLES, Eagles!